मुरली मनोहर नंद लाला
भज मुरली मनोहर नंद लाला
भज मुरली मनोहर नंद लाला
कृष्ण गोविंद गोविंद गोपाला
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 कृष्ण गोविंद गोविंद गोपाला।
बोलिए सर्वेश्वर भगवान की जय। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः।
Welcome to Satsang, everyone. Welcome. I'll start with a question or two that have come in advance, and then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here has. How to prevent the straw from falling on the camel's back. So those of you who were here last night, that'll make sense. Those of you who weren't, let me put it into a little bit of context. We were speaking last night about that which we've done. That which we've done to others, that which others have done to us. We were speaking about forgiveness and compassion. And the idea that with most people, with most of us, we don't really let things go. If someone does something to us today, we tend to get ourselves very worked up, even if what they did today is very small. If we've been holding on for a long time, other things they've done, one little small thing today can send us into a complete fit. You're always like this, you always do this, you've been doing this to me forever, you are like this. We make all kinds of outrageous statements because we've had sort of a buildup of a volcano inside of us. And I was saying how God, when you offer to God what you've done at the end of the day, how before we sleep at night, it's a beautiful practice to offer everything to God. All of the good things that we did, what Pujya Swamiji calls our plus points, and all of the not so wise things that we did, which we call our minus points. And the plus points we offer to God by saying, it's only your grace. It's only your grace that has enabled me to do this. I know who I am. I know how weak I am. I know how troubled I am. flower blossomed. And our minus points we offer, prayer that we may be made stronger the next day. But I said, circling back to our question of tonight, I said, but God never opens what Pujya Swamiji calls your old files. So God is never going to say to you, yeah, I've been hearing you say this every night for the last 10 years. How many times do you want me to forgive you? God will never say that. The minute you come to God, the minute you say, I'm yours, take me, God is there. God doesn't say you are, you're already too old, you're already too corrupted, you're already too much. Doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, how rich you are, how poor you are, how educated you are, how uneducated you are. The minute you go to God, God is there. And so the question of how to prevent the straw on the camel's back came from that teaching last night, how for most of us, one little thing today that makes us fly into a fit is because it is that metaphoric straw on the camel's back. We've had pounds and pounds and pounds and just that little straw. So how do we prevent that? Well, I actually would say, I would adjust the question. I don't think the goal is preventing the straw. If you can, fantastic. Meaning, if you can really never lose your temper to anyone again, fantastic. If you can never do anything that you'd rather that you didn't do, never act out of greed, out of lust, out of ego, out of anger, fantastic. If you can do that. But that's a really hard instruction. These straws are very small. These straws are, I was stressed, I was underslept, I was overtired, I was hungry, it happened. Again, if you can prevent it, fantastic, God bless you. But I would take the question in a different way. And I would say, rather than focusing on preventing the straw, how can we develop a practice such that every day we clean the camel's back? So that whatever lands on it tomorrow is just a straw. And it's not such a big deal. The only problem with the straw is actually when it breaks the back because there's so much already piled up. So instead of thinking, how can I never do something wrong? How can I never act out of ignorance? And also instead of thinking, how can I make sure no one hurts me? Because I'm piling things up on my back, the metaphoric camel. Not just by what I do, but by what others do to me. And so I lose myself both in a fit at other people, as well as in a fit to myself. If at the end of every day, or the beginning of every day, either way, whatever works for you, a night meditator, a morning meditator, both are great. If we take a moment and we clean any of the spots on ourselves, whether we've put them there and they're things that we feel badly about, or whether they're things other people have done to us that we're holding on a grudge, whether someone did it to us 20 years ago or 2 days ago, either way. If we can have a practice in our meditation of cleaning that metaphoric back of the camel, then every day at the most, you just end up with a straw or two. Not a big deal. No camel ever notices. And if we can keep doing that, that's what's going to keep us from having the fits. That's what's going to prevent the back of the camel from breaking. And you know, it's tragically interesting. If you imagine someone comes to your house, you've just bought a brand new couch, white couch, cream-colored couch, some nice light-colored couch like this, and you invite them to sit down on the couch, and you go in the kitchen and you, with your own hands, make them a cup of tea or coffee. Bring it to them. You serve them really with this Atiti Devo Bhava. The guest is God, and maybe this person is actually a good friend of yours. You give them the cup of tea or coffee. And then, either accidentally or purposely, either way it doesn't matter, the person spills the coffee or tea on your couch. And then, to make matters worse, they stand up and walk out. Okay? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Clean the couch. Anybody going to chase them down the block and try to get them to come back and clean it? Anybody going to leave the stain there until the next time that person comes back just to show them, look what you've done? Anybody going to leave the stain so that you can show other people what that person did to you? Look, can you believe it? My God, this guy came to my house 2 months ago, spilled this tea, look at it. People would think you're crazy. Okay, 2 months ago, somebody spilled a cup of tea, but seriously, you haven't cleaned it up since then? Because we understand that we have to live with the couch. When it smells, we have to deal with the smell. When it gets bugs, we have to deal with the bugs. When other people come and we want to give them a place on our beautiful couch, we no longer can do that because we don't have a beautiful couch. We have a coffee-stained couch with bugs and smelling. And so we're going to do exactly what she said, which is we're going to clean the couch immediately. So we understand that for our furniture, but we don't understand it for our hearts. Someone hurts us. On purpose or accidentally, usually accidentally. You know, as I always say, almost no one really wakes up in the morning and says, I know what I'm going to do today. I'm going to make this person's life miserable. No one does that. No one plots and plans to make you miserable. It happens. It happens because they're living in their own ignorance, in their own fear, in their own ego, in their own desires. So they spill that coffee or tea. They hurt your heart. But instead of cleaning it right away, we hold it there. We hold that pain there. They've got to come back. They need to apologize. They need to feel really bad. And other people need to know what's happened to me. I'm going to hold this. That person did this to me. We're going to go find other people maybe who know that person. Can you believe it? Yeah, he did that to me too. Spilled it on my couch also. We need to take as good care of our hearts as we take care of our furniture. And so we metaphorically clean the back of the camel. We clean our heart every day from whatever has stained it. I've made a mistake. I've done something that makes me feel stupid, makes me feel worthless. Somebody else has done something that's hurt me. Either way. If it's something I've done, we try to make amends. We apologize. We do whatever we can to clean that person's couch. Just because other people don't clean the couch before they leave doesn't mean we can't. If we spill a tea or coffee on someone's couch, Well, let us be the people who clean it before we go. If we've hurt someone, let us do whatever we can to make it better. But in terms of how we feel, in terms of that condemnation of the self, that you're stupid, you're jealous, you're bad, you're worthless, you're not spiritual, you don't have compassion, all of that stuff we berate ourselves with, that we need to clean. And all the stuff other people have done to us, every day we clean it. So that's what I would do. Rather than worrying about the individual straws, I would worry about the stuff that had already accumulated on the camel's back. Clean that every day. And develop a ritual for you. Rituals are really, really powerful. If you have a meditation practice, if that works for you, give it to God in your meditation. If that's not your spiritual path, that's also okay. But develop some way, some very specific way at the end of every day. Maybe it's when you take a shower, when you come home in the evening. Maybe it's in your morning shower. Maybe it's some other ritual you want to create. Take a little water, sprinkle it over yourself. Light a candle. Whatever it is, but some ritual. Keep a little pot, a little bowl, a little empty bowl. Offer everything into that bowl. Have an image of the divine or something that feels divine to you. Even if it's a tree, a sunset, a mountain. If you don't come from a tradition that has images of the divine, no problem. All of creation is an image of the divine. Something that speaks to you. Put that bowl in front of the image of the divine and offer everything into the bowl. And then every day take that bowl and wash it out and put it back. Before taking any of the other questions that came in advance, I wanted to open it up and see if there were any questions that anyone here has, which I would be happy to take. Yes? You. How to overcome fears? Well, first of all, realize that fears are actually beneficial for us. We have them for a reason. That doesn't mean you can't overcome them, but it means that you shouldn't feel badly about yourself for having them. Fear is part of a system in the body, a nervous system of our body that literally we have, if you look over evolution, because it has kept us alive. Our ancestors, who when a tiger came near to them, were very, very calm about it. They didn't live to pass on their genes. The ones who panicked and ran, they're our ancestors. They lived to pass on their genes. The ancestors who understood, we have a harvest now, but it's going to get cold. Oh my God, maybe when it gets cold, our harvest will die. What will we eat? I'm very nervous about that. They were the ones who saved food for the winter time. Again, they are our ancestors because they lived to pass on their genes. The ones who ate all the food before the winter, thinking, well, it'll be okay, I'm sure something will turn up. They're not the ones who lived to pass on their genes. So fear is actually evolutionarily advantageous. It's the thing that makes us say, Is that a bear? Oh my God, that might be a bear. Let me run. Long before it's close enough for us to be absolutely sure it's a bear. Because by that point, it's a little too close already. So a little bit of, oh my God, that could be a bear, is what has kept our ancestors alive and reproducing so that we're here. So when something is that deeply ingrained, don't feel badly for having it. Look at insects. Try to kill an insect. I mean, it sounds like a bad injunction for a spiritual person to be giving. You don't have to actually kill it, but at least just try. What you'll find is they don't want to die. They run, they fly, they do whatever they possibly can do. Even this speck of a thing that has no real brain, that isn't analyzing things, nonetheless, it's afraid. It's going to run, it's going to fly, it's going to crawl. So fear is something that really is at the very core of who we are. And it is something that has been actually advantageous for us for millions of years, not a few weeks. So that's why it's so deeply in us. Now, we come to how do we work with it? Because the dilemma today is most of us are not going to be attacked by tigers or bears. The food doesn't run out in the wintertime. We're able to sustain ourselves all year long. The stuff that kept our ancestors alive by being afraid are things we don't actually have to deal with. Our food is there, our shelter is there. We become stressed and afraid about things that are not actually life or death, but we give them the life or death emphasis. And so they tend to be things like getting fired from my job, not having someone I love me back, not being a success in what I'm trying to do. I have a plan, I have a project, I have a dream. I'm afraid it won't happen. I'm afraid I'll fail. I'm afraid people will make fun of me. I'm afraid I'll be humiliated. I love this person, but I'm afraid because what if they reject me? I can't tell them I love them because I'm afraid. Or on the off chance they do love me, well, I'm afraid to be in love because what if something happens? What if they get sick and die? Then I'm going to suffer. And so we live our lives in fear in a way that instead of helping us actually harms us. Because stress actually causes all the things we're worried about. When you're stressed, you don't function well. This is why for any of you who are students or have children who are students, staying up all night studying is actually the very worst thing they can do. Because even if they learn the material, they're not going to remember it in the morning. They're not going to be able to give it back properly on an exam because their brain's not functioning. The more nervous we are, the worse our recall. As anyone who has ever had a very mean or strict boss stand over their head literally while they have to do something, you know, things that you can do very easily when you're alone, suddenly there's the boss standing there and you can't do anything. So stress and fear actually renders us incompetent, inefficient, forgetful. It also renders our immune system very bad. So if I'm afraid of getting sick and dying, that stress is actually, ironically, going to contribute to me getting sick. If I'm afraid of someone leaving me, I love someone, I'm afraid they're going to leave me. Well, the way that stress leads me to hold them with a death grip, sadly, very frequently will lead to them wanting to leave me because they feel suffocated. And so we end up really shooting ourselves in the foot because we think on some unconscious level that if I'm stressed enough, I'll somehow prevent it from happening. But actually, my stress makes it more likely to happen. And that's not even taking into consideration the power of thought. What we also know is that the more I think about something, the more likely I am to bring it into reality. And so if what I think about all the time in my stress is, oh my God, this person's going to leave me. Oh my God, I'm going to get fired. Oh my God, I'm going to be a failure. That's actually what I'm programming myself for. Failure, abandonment. And that actually ends up becoming what I draw to me. Because my entire energy is saying, failure, failure, failure. Now, I may be saying, don't fail, don't fail, don't fail. But it doesn't matter. The word do or don't is irrelevant. What's creating the impression is fail, 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 fail. So how to work with our fears? The only antidote to fear, there's only one: faith. To have faith. There's a beautiful story that Puja Swamiji loves to tell of a young boy on a boat, and the boat is actually sinking. They've announced that the boat is sinking, and everybody's running around, and they're getting on life jackets and getting into lifeboats and panicking. And this one little boy is sitting very calmly. And someone says to him, "Aren't you worried? You're going to die. This boat's going to sink." And he says, "Oh, but my mom's over there. She'll take care of it." That faith is the only antidote to fear. Is I am in God's hands. And if you don't use the word God, I am in the universe's hands. I am in Spirit's hands. It doesn't matter what the word is. But I am in the hands of an intelligence that is all-powerful and that actually wants the best for me. I'm in that hands. I'm in those hands. And you think about everything in nature. You think about, chipmunks and squirrels, right? Who somehow know instinctively to gather nuts and store them in their cheeks and bury them for the winter time. Well, they never went to school. There's no chipmunk manual. How do they know that? Instinctively. How does the caterpillar know how to become a butterfly? Nobody taught him. He never even watched his mom or dad do that, because the minute they went up the tree, they never came back down. But there's an intelligence. There's an intelligence in creation. All of creation. And we have it also. We have that intelligence. Now, that doesn't mean you are going to live to be 200 years old. It doesn't mean you're never going to get sick. It doesn't mean that you're never going to get fired from a job. It doesn't mean nobody's ever going to leave you. You will die. Before you die, you will get sick. You will die before you are 200. Somebody you love will leave you. Whether they leave you out of choice, they're divorcing you or just leaving you, whether they leave you because they died first. Somebody you love will leave you. You'd have to die very young to die before anybody you loved. People we love will leave us by choice, by death. It happens. And we will get sick. Usually we will overcome the sickness, but eventually we'll have a sickness that we don't overcome. That's the reality, that's the given. But then we have faith that beyond all of that that doesn't make a lot of sense. Why are we here? If it's just about sickness and death and this and that. There's a spirit. There's a divine spirit, a divine presence. And to connect with that divine presence is why we're here. But in order to connect with it, you have to trust it. And that faith in the divine, the way the child has faith in the mother, of knowing I'm being carried, that no matter what happens to me, I'm in God's hands. That's the only antidote to fear. As long as I think it's all about me and it's all up to me, life is very stressful. But as soon as I realize it's not about me and it's not up to me, then suddenly the fears dissipate. Any other questions? Yes. How do we deal with grief? A lot of patience, a lot of openness, meaning typically when grief comes, our first reaction is to try to push it away. What can I do not to feel sad? And the problem with that is grief is there. It's not going to go away. Not until it's stayed as long as it needs to stay. Grief heals, but it doesn't go away. Meaning, if you try to simply distract yourself from it, not that that's bad, a lot of times we do just need a break from our grief, but it's not actually healing it. And so the idea of I'm going to distract myself and make it go away, I'm going to think about something else, it doesn't work. Maybe fine for a few minutes, by all means, give yourself a break, go to a movie. But that's not actually what makes it go away. What makes it eventually go away is only when it heals. And the only way to heal it is to create the space for it to exist. It has to have the ability to exist, not by me pushing it away. When we lose someone we love, we lose a part of ourselves. That's not a joke, and it's not something that you can just get over like that. We really energetically lose part of us. And that takes a while to heal. If somebody came and cut off your leg, eventually the wound would heal. Eventually you would learn how to use a pair of crutches. You'd learn how to get around. But you couldn't artificially speed up the process. You couldn't go to a movie and expect that the movie was somehow going to make the wound heal. The wound needs to be seen and attended to and honored, as does our grief. And when it's there, we allow it to be there. There's nothing wrong with tears. There's nothing wrong with sadness. I realize it doesn't feel very good. But there's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly natural. And we have to give it its space. There have to be tears. There has to be sadness. There has to be pain. And only then can we move through it. But the other really powerful practice with it is to realize that the one we loved, we didn't just love their body, We loved their soul. We loved their spirit. And that's actually still here with us. We grieve the loss of the body because it was really nice to hold their hands, to look in their eyes, to hear their voice. Really nice. And so we grieve that loss. But we don't allow ourselves to believe that that person is over, finished, gone. Because that would imply that they only were their body. And we know they weren't. Because if we really loved them, we connected with their soul, we connected with their spirit, we connected with their essence. And that's still here. So in the midst of your grief, allow yourself to stay connected. People may say, get over it. You're imagining things. Don't listen to them. Really. You who are so connected to that person, yeah, you can see them. You can hear them. You can feel them. This is what happens when we lose a loved one. But then everyone around us says, oh, get over it. You're imagining things. You can't really hear them. You can't really see them. You can't really feel them. You need to let go. You need to move on. The truth is that person is still there with you, just in a completely different form. In a form that these eyes can't see, these ears can't hear, but our inner eye can see, our inner ear can hear, and our soul feels it and knows it. And so allow that. Don't degrade their memory by pretending that they were only their body and therefore they're all gone. They're not only their body. They're not all gone. The body's gone, so we grieve that. But we also remember that they are still here. And we stay connected. And when the tears come, we allow them to flow. Perfectly natural. And then when in the midst of the tears a smile comes, we allow the smile to come. When in the midst of the smile anger comes, we allow the anger to come, we sit with the anger. When in the midst of the anger joy comes because we remember something about them, we allow the joy. And we just allow and allow and allow and allow. And eventually we heal. But we heal in a way, we're never exactly the same. We don't get over it. But we were rebuilt in a way. Much like if someone had cut off your leg. Right? So you move through the world in a slightly different way. No, you're not constantly aware of the leg being cut. No, you're not in pain anymore. But your way of moving through the world, your existence has been impacted. And that's actually beautiful. Because the goal of life is not to stay unimpacted. The goal of life is not how to stay perfectly intact and always the same regardless of what happens. The point of life is to interact with the creation. Allow it in us. Allow us in it. That's actually how we begin to know God, is through the creation. Because God's in the creation, right? So we actually begin to know God through our connection and our love with the creation. So you've been impacted, you've been changed. Fantastic. Wonderful. And yeah, it hurts a lot. And that's okay too. Allow that. Just allow the space. You may have to do fewer things. That's okay. It'll take a little while. But allow the space in your heart. Don't try to push it away. Last question. Yes. How to practice detachment while living in this world? Well, I love the question because it gives me an opportunity to share one of my most favorite realizations within the spiritual philosophy. Detachment is something that, as far as spiritual traditions are concerned, is emphasized more in the Indian tradition than in any other tradition I've ever heard of. It may only be emphasized in this tradition. And when I first came here, I was really confused by that, because you would see lots and lots of people on a spiritual path, people claiming to be spiritual people, who would say things like, I'm so detached. I feel so, this is so great. I'm so detached. My daughter lost her job and is getting a divorce. And you know what? It didn't impact me at all. I'm so detached. This is so great. Or, my neighbor died at my feet yesterday morning and it didn't impact me at all. And and now when I walk down the street and I see all the poor people, it used to really impact me, but it doesn't anymore because I've been practicing detachment. And they would state these things like that was somehow a virtue. That somehow to be able to walk by suffering people without being impacted was somehow a virtue worth striving for. And it really confused me, especially because the enlightened masters I knew were the ones who were the most connected, the most compassionate, the most wanting to serve, the ones who would be the first on the ground to pick up the dying neighbor, rather than, practicing their detachment. They are the ones who would lie on the ground. If they saw the neighbor falling, they'd be there to catch the neighbor's fall. And it was a real confusion for me for a while. Here's how it solved in me. I was listening to a beautiful discourse on the scriptures, and particularly on the Puranas. And in the Indian tradition, the virtues are actually frequently embodied. And so when we talk about bhakti, for example, devotion, well, Bhakti is actually a being, and she actually was born, and she actually, there's stories about her life. She was born and she died. Well, Vairagya, which is the Sanskrit for detachment, also was a being who was Bhakti's son, right? And I heard this in the lecture, how Bhakti gave birth to Vairagya. And in that moment, it clicked. Because I realized, okay, wait. Bhakti is not dry devotion. Bhakti is juice-filled, ras-filled, gorgeous, all-encompassing devotion. And there is no way that juicy devotion gives birth to dry detachment. But here's how I think it works. I think the English translation of Vairagya has not been done properly. I think it actually should be translated as reattachment instead of detachment or non-attachment. Meaning, you begin with bhakti. You begin with the mother, because in order to have a son, obviously, you have to start with the mother. So we have devotion for God. That's what bhakti is. We have juicy, all-encompassing love for God. When I have that, naturally my attachment to the little things, who stole my parking place, who's taking credit for the work I did, who's got, nicer clothes than I do, who's treating me respectfully versus not respectfully. That stuff goes away automatically. Because I'm so attached to the divine that what I've done is I have reattached myself from being attached to who's saying what, who's making how much, whose house, whose car, whose wife, who's this, who's that. Instead of being attached to that, I'm attached to God. I haven't pushed those things away. I haven't said, I'm not going to care about this, I'm not going to care about that. Because the more you do that, it becomes like I was talking about in the beginning, about saying, don't fail, don't fail, don't fail. Well, my psyche is still full of failure. And in the same way, if I say, I'm not going to think about money, I'm not going to think about money, I'm not going to think about money, what's occupying my consciousness? Money. I don't care about money, I don't care about money, I don't care about money. My entire consciousness is full of money. Instead of that, I focus over here. I fall in love with God, with devotion, with love, full. I cultivate bhakti. I practice bhakti. When I have real devotion, my attachment to these things will dissipate. I don't have to physically remove myself from a family, from a workplace, from a city, from my bank account. I can still be there. But I'm not attached to the little things because I'm immersed in bhakti. And I think that's the only way, because the more you push something away psychologically, the more it's in your mind. If I say to you, okay, we're now going to meditate, and whatever you do, don't think about elephants. Right? So what's everybody's mind full of in the moment? Right? This is how our psyche works. Now I've told you, don't think about elephants. But simply the concept of elephants, your mind doesn't care that I said don't. Your mind gets elephants. And so by saying, I'm not going to care about these things, I'm going to be detached, what you end up with is suffering. And this is when I would look on the faces of people who would extol their own detachment. They didn't look like people I wanted to be. Aside from being able to let their neighbor die at their feet or walk around, walk by poor people, as individuals, they didn't seem enlightened, they didn't seem peaceful, they didn't seem blissful. There was nothing I could look at them and say, God, I want some of that. They looked frustrated. They looked contracted and constricted, sort of emotionally constipated. I mean, really, that's the only way to not feel things that were there. Push them away. Not going to feel it. Not going to feel it. But that doesn't lead to enlightenment. So practice your devotion, practice your bhakti. Reattach yourself to God. And it doesn't necessarily have to be God in a temple. I'm not saying thou shalt spend 10 hours a day sitting in puja. God is in everyone. God is in everything. Commit yourself, whoever your Ishtadev is. However you conceive of, worship the divine, doesn't matter. Practice seeing that in everyone. Wherever you go. Try to fall in love with everyone and everything wherever you are, because they are an embodiment of the divine. It's not easy. But the good news is, even if you don't get there 100%, simply the practice of it fills you with love. And it certainly takes your mind away from this nonsense over here that you were previously attached to. So the detachment comes automatically. But it comes in a full way, in an open way, in an expansive way, rather than a constricted and contracted way. So you're not pushing something away, rather you're embracing something else. Have a beautiful rest of your evening, everyone. And we'll look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. And if you have a question we didn't get to and you won't be here, or you feel shy to ask it in public, you can get it to Lori, who will get it to me on the paper in advance tomorrow.